Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. As always, support the transmission through donations or by becoming a paid subscriber. You can consult, you can purchase a consult if you want to chat with me. And I got a bunch of affiliates you can check out. And one of those affiliates or sponsors is joining me today. His name is Nik Kraljevic of Sociatates Civis, a bunch of apps which make dual citizenship easy, as well as PassVult, which we'll get into, which manages passwords. And so he's a sponsor of Geopolitics and Empire. Welcome to the podcast. Dobrodošli. Dobrodošao, Nik.
Hey, dobar dan. Pozdrav svih slušateljima. Really great to be here. Thanks for having me. Really excited to chat today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We've been chatting for a while. And you approached me with your apps, and I've seen them in at least the Croatian one in Croatian papers. So you're interviewed for Croatian papers, and so you've sort of built reputation. You're not someone coming out of left field, but just real quick, if you want to tell us really briefly about your projects, and then we'll dig deeper into them.
Yeah, easy. So I guess we have two kind of main projects. One is Sociatates Civis. Don't ask me to spell that; I may struggle. But that's pretty much just around the whole concept is making, getting a second citizenship simple. Up until now, it's really been by descent. So we started with Croatia. Funny enough, I think Croatia still so far has had the most interesting and unique edge cases for all the countries in terms of, when you can get citizenship and when you cannot. Italy and Poland as well. We're launching Argentina and Paraguay soon. Probably Costa Rica shortly after that. I guess the real concept is citizenship is kind of hard. I grew up in Australia, and our public service is super efficient in terms of you need something, you click a few buttons, you pay the guy, you kind of know everything you need up front. That's not really the case with, when you're going through the whole getting a passport and, depending on what time your family left and countries and certain things, there's all these interesting, unique cases that, once you've been spoiled and you're in it's everything super easy. It's like, okay, this is hard. I see why people struggle. So we kind of turn that into an app, which is a quick little questionnaire type app, and it does a few other things, but then based on how you answer, it'll kind of let you know what you're eligible for, like are you eligible by descent or marriage, etc. Can you naturalize, all that sort of thing. So I guess the idea is we educate people, we help them through the process. If they are brave enough to want to do it by themselves, we give them kind of all the tools they need to do it by themselves. Otherwise, we can connect them with some reputable companies and partners who'll, help them and do everything for a fee. And then also got a whole bunch of other apps, but I guess the main one I'm most passionate about, is PassVult. I've got my entire career has been in cybersecurity for the most part. There's a lot of password managers out there, and you end up with accounts for things. I am on the privacy and security conscious side, I would say, and pretty much each one of these password manager apps, they're all cloud based. They have a breach every other year, which is all of your details. So for me, it just seems crazy. Like if you had all your money in the bank and it kept getting robbed, and you just decide to leave it there, after the third and fourth time, it's nuts. So PassVult is sort of an anti-cloud, private focused password manager. It all stays local to your device. I guess, the cloud is someone else's computer at the end of the day. So, of course, it doesn't do cloud backups and things. So if you lose a device, hey, you've lost that, but I think it's better than the alternative of trusting somebody and they're getting breached repeatedly anyway. So yeah, sales pitch over.
So, all right. So those are your projects, and let's go back to the apps for citizenship. So this is something that I sort of espouse. I've got 3 citizenships, and I think it's important. A lot of people listening to the podcast, especially during the 2020s, were looking to expatriate, to escape their countries. And you have had on the international man, Doug Casey, and I've read folks like him and oh, I'm forgetting many of the other folks that I've read throughout the years. Mark, there was a guy called Mark, and just that principle, that's even the biblical principle. You read in the Old Testament, it talks about diversifying your wealth, not keeping it in one place. It's good to have multiple citizenships or residencies so you can easily move about the planet for whatever reason. Maybe you get a financial opportunity in another country. Maybe you marry someone of another country. Maybe you need to flee the country where you're at. And so just, do you have thoughts on this idea of internationalizing?
Yeah, I mean, I agree pretty much. I guess the core principle is the more sort of options you have, the more free you are, the more you can, you can say no to, crappy deals and stuff like that. So yeah, I think everyone should try to do it if they can, if they're able. Having a second place and not have everything tied up in one place is exactly so. Just to me, it seems basic common sense, right? Like if you live in one country, everything disappears, or it gets blown up or whatever. You always have a second place. You always have a second thing. So many eggs in lots of different baskets, I think is the best and the smartest strategy. I guess you can have to live. And I think the world now is probably, I feel like the last 70 or so years things have been relatively stable, aside from a few blips. But pretty much all of human history is very chaotic, and it's sort of coming back now, I feel. So you can't, everything was just, if you listen to people of my grandparents' generation, people could come to emigrate to Australia. They could just work as a cleaner, just working as a cleaner. They didn't own a cleaning business or anything, and they would end up with like 4 homes. Just from saving. There was no partying, no going out, but even if you own a cleaning business, that's probably not possible today. So I think we're in a really interesting time, really crazy time. There's obviously a lot of downsides, but there's a lot of upsides as well, and I think my kind of view at the moment, which changes every week or so, but I guess sort of countries are looking at either clamping down on their people and the money from leaving, or opening up to get more people and money to come in. So I guess if you're in a place that's that's locking down and giving you less and less freedom and rights and putting restrictions on stuff, you can always go to a place that is going to be the opposite. So yeah, take advantage. Why not?
And maybe for yourself or myself, where we are, I'm a Croatian American. I guess you're a Croatian Australian. I'm Mexican now. If I have to, I can always leave and go back to Croatia. Same for you, I assume. But something you brought up is fascinating. That a lot of our Croatian forefathers and friends of our parents. You're talking about Australia. I think it's the same case, Australia or United States. And folks, I hear stories of Croats that emigrated in the 60s and 70s to Illinois, where I'm from, and they did super well. They didn't speak English at all. They worked hard, blue collar jobs. They were able to save money back then, buy one property, which led to a second, which led to a third. And now I feel like today that is just not possible at all. Do you have any thought on that?
Yeah, I agree. It was like a much simpler time, a much easier time. Talking to other people of different generations, they kind of feel the same. That sort of post the 90s is when things started to get a lot harder everywhere, which is for the same thing, buying a house. This is, I guess, the number one topic in all of Australian media and general conversation, which is, cost of living, property prices. Sydney is like one of the most expensive cities in the world. I think the average house price is like 1.6 million Australian dollars. So that's crazy. It's, you need to save 20% to get a loan from the bank. So it's just, it's even if you have a really great job, that's not an easy task. So everything in general, I think in the Western world has just become a lot harder, a lot more expensive. And, when all our forefathers came and left the world in search of better opportunities, because there was no opportunities, in their villages and whatever in Croatia, it's kind of almost reversing, I feel, in a sense, where there's probably more opportunities in those places now, and places that were, really awesome, like, the US and Australia are probably, they're not as good for people making the jump. So,
It's funny. I'm looking for my American dream in Mexico. One of my early podcasts was with a cultural historian Morris Berman, and he's talked about that. Yeah, I'm actually not really interested in the United States. I'd rather go to Croatia, or Mexico. It's just funny how the cycles turn. And getting back then to your app, just off the cuff, are there any good stories that you recall of people using your apps to begin the process of naturalization and getting their citizenship and passports? It's I've got a number of stories. Getting out of Kazakhstan during COVID wouldn't have been possible, I think, for me without my Croatian passport, because we had to pass through the EU, Amsterdam, and they weren't, I believe, letting non-EU nationals through, and they actually kept us waiting for like a half an hour. And I'm just thinking, wait a minute, I'm a Croatian. I angrily walked up to the EU guard and I like, why am I waiting? I'm not a non-European. And he's like, oh yeah, you can go through. And my family could go through with me, even though they weren't European citizens, because they were my family. And so there are many of these occasions where, or, again, you can use the passport as an entry to go back to your parents' country and buy property, look for jobs, start businesses. And so just any stories that you can recall that are, happy stories.
Yeah, there's so far no crazy stories like you've escaped the airport, on the last plane out of wherever. But yeah, I mean, we've managed to help a few people get their citizenship really fast, in as much as 3 months, which is some of that was luck. A lot of it was just helping people and knowing who to contact and what process to follow, so everything's up in the right place. So no real crazy stories. We've had a lot of people are happy. There's a lot of people who are, looking to play sport. As being Croatian, soccer is like your second, or football, depending on where you're listening, is your second religion. So there's a lot of folks who've grown up with kids who want to, get the passport so they can, play in the Premier League or play in the Liga or something like that. I think for most people, it's really like a doorway, right? People get it in the interest of having a second option, and then they move on to other things like, it wouldn't be a Croatian family story without like a land dispute. So they start, working out what's happening there. Start thinking about moving. A lot of people are retiring. I think my own parents are sort of thinking now about, hey, should we when we retire, which is coming up, fairly soon, should we move over there? So I guess, yeah, I'd say we're the gateway drug to, changing your life in a way. But yeah, if there are any users who listen to this and they do have a crazy story, please share it with us. I'd love to share it. It's just for entertainment value alone, it's amazing. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the land disputes. Tell me about it. I mean, my parents, grandparents, parents, just never ends. The land disputes in Croatia, fights with neighbors, and I did have one horror story. One of my neighbors here, actually where I live, he's long since left, but I think he was British, and his wife was Colombian, and she just couldn't get into the UK. There was, for some Kafkaesque reason, they wouldn't give her a visa, or they denied her, and they could never go visit his family. And so it's just crazy how some countries have really strict visa regimes. And anything else to add about the apps that you have before we move on to the cybersecurity and other stuff?
Yeah, I guess the only other thing is to add is, obviously, even with that example, right, international law and visas and things is a bit complicated and Byzantine. So even though we kind of feel like we're in 2025 and we're advanced, you still have old laws. That kind of sounds strange to us, when that put people in weird quagmires and things like that. So I guess it's interesting in that regard, but I guess, yeah, the whole point of all the apps is to kind of help at least educate and help people avoid some of these weird situations if they can, make it easier and faster for everyone, and try and make it cheaper, right? Like, obviously, depending on where you are in life and what your current budgets are like, you can pay someone hundreds of thousands, you can do it for yourself for a couple thousand, and everything in between. So I guess we're there. We're ready to help people and give people the options to kind of do things as they like. And yeah.
There was a recent article I read that the Croatian government is trying to get more active in Latin America. I think I read that there's maybe like 800 Croatians in Mexico, something like that. But it's good news they're trying to get more active. And I would also, I talk about this often on the podcast, the border industrial complex, the algorithm ghetto, where I'm following different accounts that are international. They promote, second, third passports and that sort of stuff, expatriation. There's a number of services and accounts out there. And I'm noticing that many countries now, I think, are clamping down. Some countries that used to sell passports are no longer doing it, although America is now to millionaires, right? But I think they are removing some of these options. So if you're going to do this, I would say now is the time to look into if your heritage. I think you may have alluded to it. If your parents or even grandparents and sometimes great grandparents, you can leverage that to obtain citizenship. Maybe moving now to any thought on Croatia? Just maybe before we leave, us both being Croatians, I've been reading that the number one European destination, they said this year, is Croatia. Croatia's got the cleanest sea and the safest country, according to many rankings that I read. And so, any thoughts on Croatia? A lot of people go for tourism. They had the boycotts recently in Croatia, where the cost of living is very high, and the salaries are not they're not very high either. Just any thoughts on Croatia?
Yeah. I guess on the passport and citizenship front, first up, I think now the law has changed so that if you return, you get basically like 5 years without having to pay income tax. You get like a break. So I think stuff like this is really good. Obviously, there's as you alluded to as well. I think Croatians en masse for the last 200 years have sort of gone to every corner of the globe. And had families there and whatever. There's a whole legacy. So, I think as you said, it's a great place. It's beautiful. I have experiences in Croatia that, are borderline unbelievable, but, amazing as well at the same time. Just like little funny things from, it's a great place. I love it. I can't wait to go back, I think, permanently at some stage in my life if everything works out well. And yeah, I think probably in terms of Europe is probably one of the better places to be at the moment. Like every country, everyone has their own issues, and I think there's always also this, the grass is greener mentality. But I'd say best place in Europe easily. I am totally biased though, so and I think I don't know. I think Europe in general is. I think they're probably the group of countries or the EU has pioneered giving people crazy amounts of tax and things like that. So eventually people have left and stuff like that. So I think Croatia and Hungary, a few other countries like that, are trying to buck the trend by just making it easy for people. If you have a lot of kids, obviously their populations are dropping. So in Hungary, you basically pay no income tax. I think after 3 kids, something like that. I think probably good first step for Croatia, giving people a tax break. It does, it's very different to how the US and Australia works too. So I think if you go back, you'll get 5 years tax free. You'll be able to save some money, work out how everything works, and really get a head start. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're doing something that you can easily do from any country, I'd say if you can, why not go back? And I think that's the first time anyone has, mentioned Croatia in totality without making a soccer reference about, World Cup or whatever. So I almost got there to the end without doing it. So.
Yeah. And, I still have in my mind, it's very ingrained because I went there as a kid very often in the 80s and during the tail end of Yugoslavia. And then in the 90s. And what I do like about Croatia is there are still parts that I can go to that feel like it's still the 1990s. Again, I can go to the old villages and I feel like I'm transported back in time. And it's important as we speed forward into this digital technocracy. So, all right, we talked about internationalization, passports. Now, maybe to talk more on the technocratic and cybersecurity before touching on your latest cybersecurity app. Just in general, what's your feeling when it comes to cybersecurity? This is a key field, I think, because, the fourth industrial revolution, artificial intelligence, we are just speeding forward into this digital future. But at the same time, you mentioned there's nonstop hacking of so many things. Our good friend, Cobra Commander Klaus Schwab, in the past, he's mentioned a cyber polygon event that we will see an increase number of cyber attacks and stuff like this. And so, what's your pulse on when it comes to the digital space? What's going on?
Yeah, I think agree with a lot of what you said. I think when Klaus Schwab described cybersecurity and all of those guys, it is like the most complete fluff, high-level marketing version of cybersecurity. It's a lot of it's not really tied in reality. So I think a lot of the claims and a lot of the stuff these guys are saying, they don't really understand the concept well, for one. So I guess there's hope in that, which is these guys are sort of think it's something, but it's not quite what they think it is. I think also, it's becoming more and more important. I think it's definitely hard to accumulate these skills and to find people and hire people if you're in a business as well. So that's its own interesting challenge. I think in the last 5 years as well, the field has really grown. There's a lot of things that are, now cybersecurity jobs or cybersecurity in the cybersecurity industry, which are not traditionally cybersecurity things. That a lot of it's sort of a lot of governance and stuff like that. So I guess the way I would look at it is it's all risk based, right? So I think the secret to really good cybersecurity is just having common sense. That goes for you on a personal level as well as if you're running a company or something. So don't just do everything in proportionate to the level of risk, right? If it's if it's not too important, maybe don't spend so much time and effort securing things, and if it is, spend all the effort you can afford. I guess, and all of that sounds very common sense, but I guess if you do that, I guess the hardest part is I guess really knowing something, thinking about it, thinking about exactly how risky is this, what's the worst case scenario, what should I do, and after that, it's all common sense. But I think it's if anyone's interested in it, it's a great field. You'll learn a lot, and by nature of the way the field kind of touches a lot of things in just technology in general, so you'll get a good a general grasp of a lot of tech concepts. So I think it's a booming industry. It's going to probably continue to be a booming industry for the next 10 or so years at least. It does seem to come in sort of peaks and troughs where people start talking about cybersecurity going away and we should just build things securely, which, works to a point. And then, new verticals pop up like AI and all of that stuff. And then you're basically back to square one. So I think cybersecurity is here to stay. Definitely worth learning if you're interested in it. Don't believe all the fear mongering about the global cyber attack. I think if it does happen, it would be really, really hard to pull off. And I don't think something like that, it'd be, it'd have to be, way into the future when everything is connected to a point. I think there's still, a whole bunch of stuff. I'd say I'd be more worried about like power resilience, right? Because energy sort of undercuts all of these businesses. And if you have no power or energy, then, everything goes away. So I'd say there's, that's my general thoughts on it.
And any thought on the tech, since you work in the tech field, there's a lot of hype about AI and all of these different things. You see the Bill Gateses and the Ray Kurzweils and Elon Musks, and they're talking about all these, Neuralinks and AIs. Do you think, and I read analysis, and it seems they're often hyping stuff and for financial reasons. It's a lot of it is just hype. What are your thoughts on where is reality and where is the hype?
Yeah. I think there's so like the technology itself, like, I use it a fair bit. It's definitely improved my productivity, even for just, general programming and hobby and coding side projects. Before it used to take me like 4 hours to troubleshoot some sort of error. Now you can sort of just, hey, I've got this error, what should I do? And it pretty much, you can figure it out in about 2 or 3 minutes, which is a massive just, if I think of all the days I've wasted just trying to fix something for a whole day and getting nowhere. It's amazing in that sense. The features seem to be pretty good. All the image stuff now, making everything look like Studio Ghibli or whatever is pretty much taken over my whole Twitter from what I can see. but yeah, it is definitely overhyped. I think everyone's sort of thinking that this is now going to be Skynet in like 2 years' time. It's completely crazy. I think I don't think we're anywhere close to AGI. I think we don't even really know how human consciousness works. From by all accounts, and so I think the fact that it's going to take over the world tomorrow, I'm not super bullish on it. And yeah, I think there's a lot of hype. There's a lot of financial hype. There's a lot of people have done endless podcasts on breaking down the whole NVIDIA, the whole financial situation, how it's kind of, becoming a massive bubble by pumping up the NASDAQ. And I really listen to religiously as well, Tom Luongo, Gold, Goats and Guns. And he, I think, has had probably one of the most plausible theories, which is this is maybe a way to sort of let people know, hey, it's we definitely need a lot of energy to run the data centers and all the AI stuff. Wind and solar is not going to cut it. If you look into you spend a few hours looking into this, you realize that wind and solar are not as reliable as coal and oil. So I guess if we want to have consistent power, we have to sort of get nuclear energy. So I think there's probably a few things behind the whole AI push. I'd say definitely energy security is a big one. But yeah, I don't think I don't think that Terminator 2 is gonna pop up in 5 years' time or whatever. And yeah, there's a lot into it. A lot of people are talking about it eliminating jobs as well. I don't think it will. I think I'm a big fan of David Graeber. Bullshit Jobs. It's a really, really entertaining book. I think everyone should give it a read. But his kind of thesis was, hey, we probably already could do like a 2 or 3 day work week with the amount of stuff we have and just general improvements. But there's a whole bunch of jobs where people come to work every day. They don't feel they don't feel great because they're not doing anything valuable, and they're sort of just sitting around browsing the news or whatever. So I mean, I think the future will be like a bit more dystopian, where you turn up to your your sort of boring job that you sort of try to fill the time in every day, and you have to work 5-6 days a week or whatever doing that. I think is probably going to be the actual case of where this lands. I don't think everyone's going to sort of cut 80% of the workforce because they can do it on ChatGPT now or whatever.
And then I guess moving then to privacy, right? And so PassVult, your I used to read back in the day. I still read him. Bruce Schneier, the cybersecurity expert. I follow a number of folks. Gabriel Custodia, Watchman Privacy. I got a list. Mark Jeftovic, who's also an affiliate of Geopolitics and Empire. His Easy DNS, and there are different ways to maintain your passwords and things like that. But you've got LastPass, as you've mentioned, that's on the cloud. I've never felt I don't do that kind of stuff on the cloud with passwords, and I keep it local. And I think LastPass has been hacked, if I'm not mistaken, to some degree. And then of course there's KeePass, which is an offline password storage. I have to check. There may have been some bad issue with KeePass recently. I can't recall, but and now you're coming out with PassVult. And so, thoughts on the password space, and why you are working on PassVult and what's going on there.
Yeah, I guess it's a big market, and like solutions for everyone. So LastPass is right for some people. PassVult is for others. I guess I agree. It's putting all your passwords in the cloud somewhere. Great, you get them backed up, but I don't think anyone really realizes that how big all the infrastructure is underneath these things, where the backups are, where they live, how many different places they go around the world. So it's just thinking about would you really want to copy your house key and have it in 150 different places? I'd say most people would say probably not, right? So I guess, KeePass and PassVult as well. I guess the idea is that you're not doing that. You're keeping your own keys, within your own control. So yeah, I'd say, use it. Of course, I'm going to say everyone should use PassVult as the, creator of the app. But yeah, I guess it's a big field. There's lots of industries for you. I guess and I guess this happens with a lot of technology solutions, which is, the idea behind them is good. implementation sometimes differs. So if you look at I think, was it Compaq or whatever, had the first personal computer, and the guy who made it was sort of like, it's going to be text-based, no GUI, you have to learn command line to learn how to do it. And then Apple came out and said, hey, we should make it mouse clickable, we should make it easy as possible. So I think what I'm really trying to do with PassVult is give people the security, but also make it easier in that sort of Apple fashion where everything's clickable. They don't have to remember 50 different keys and codes, and there's not a super high learning curve to learn how to do things. I would say is the goal for the project. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. It's not just passwords. What about your secret questions and answers, other notes and things you want to keep locked up, as well as your 2FA codes and MFA codes and loyalty cards like that. What we do. So I guess the idea is pretty much just security is important, privacy is important. We very much do not want to sell user data and stuff like that. Our kind of main goal is to make it privacy and security first. It's not also an endless subscription like all the other ones. Everything now seems to be a subscription. We're trying to just make it one fee, pay once, you own it forever, instead of paying in perpetuity. This all sounds like really bad business sense, but I'm hoping there's enough privacy and security people out there, and the world's big enough for everyone that everyone can find something they like. So
you mentioned, so you pay once for it and then you get access to a PassVult. So is it only on the phone? Do you have the desktop version, or it's just for mobile?
Just for mobile. For Mac, it'll work on the desktop as well. I use it for my desktop. It's open in the other screen now. So yeah, I pretty much use it. We'll look at doing something for Windows desktop, but the way we've tried to build it so it's cross-platform as possible. So I think the interest for building it on Windows is probably not there for us to do it, but if it is, we totally would. And we've got a couple other features. It's made primarily for phones. So there's a travel mode, so you can sort of lock it for a period while you're traveling. So, in case your phone gets lost or stolen. So, and we've got some dead man switch stuff. So we're trying to build a feature. So if you check into you can kind of set, if you don't check into the phone for a period, it'll, email your emergency contact, like something may have happened to you. So yeah, we're trying to just, give some really cool features, some cool James Bond type features for people for a really cheap price. So yeah.
You also mentioned that two-factor authentication. What's going on with that?
Yeah. So everyone who's, I'm sure most of you now have a two-factor authentication app as well. It's either the Google one or the Microsoft one or Authy or any of the other ones. So the app has that feature as well. So hopefully you can ditch, another set of apps from your phone as well. So, one less app to maintain and worry about.
Is the 2FA on PassVult, is that just for PassVult, or it's like a universal?
No, you can enroll. So you could enroll. Let's say you have a Gmail, you can enroll that, and so when you 2FA log in, you just got to scan the QR code and then you enter the code when you log in. So it'll work with pretty much everything that has a where you set up a 2FA code for.
I what Authy did I didn't like about a year ago, where they used to have Authy on desktop and mobile, and I hate being tethered to a smartphone, and they removed the desktop option. So the only way for 2FA is I have to have my phone always with me to access my accounts. Just any thoughts on different options beyond the smartphone for 2FA?
Yeah, there's also things like YubiKey, which is a physical key where you plug in and touch at the time. I'd say that's really good too. I have a couple myself, so that's something I really recommend. I think in general, if I'd say, I used to be an Authy user too, love the app. We've tried to sort of make our app look as good as and easy to use as Authy. So definitely big inspiration for us. I think in general around the world, there's not as many people who have a desktop as a mobile, right? If you think about, Africa and all of Latin America, I'm sure you know better than me. So I think a lot of companies are just pivoting, I think, back to mobile in a way. I think with the AI stuff as well, that we're kind of seeing a second wave of sort of AI powered apps, whether it's like calorie tracking and stuff like that. So I think we're probably going to see like a second mobile boom, I feel, or at least that's what my Twitter feed is telling me. So I think we're probably going back to mobile first. I still love doing things on a desktop. You can't really beat it for just the amount of freedom and flexibility you have. So maybe something we need to look into. Publishing a desktop 2FA app, if anyone's interested. It shouldn't be too hard for us. So, if anyone wants to reach out and say, yeah, I love it, I need the feature, we'll do it. So,
I love it, or I might just have to go with the physical YubiKey, so I don't have to have my smartphone always with me. And you mentioned the mobile boom. Yeah, I think you're right. Although, we had one of those recent globalist meetings where they're trying to deploy digital IDs and everything, and they say everyone needs to have internet, everyone needs to have electricity, as you mentioned previously, but everyone needs to have a phone. There's a swath of the global population that does not own smartphones, and they said in the meeting, I think last year, that they're going to work hard to decrease the price of smartphones, at least for a certain segment of the population. They want to create a certain model of smartphone that's like $20 or something, so that they can get everyone on the digital plantation. So I think you're right there. And there was another meeting recently with Tony Blair and Larry Ellison of Oracle, and they were both discussing. Blair is a huge proponent of digital ID, and I think it was Ellison who said, in the future, there's not going to be passwords; it's going to be biometric logins. Any thoughts on? And Google has made in the past year, I think, moves to they moved towards what was away from passwords towards passkeys.
Passkeys,
right?
Yeah, passkeys.
Your thoughts on how long will passwords be around, and will they be able to move to like biometric logins, where I guess you just scan your face to log into your desktop, or you scan your fingerprint or your palm?
Yeah, I guess short answer, I don't think so. I don't think they're going away. I think the fact to implement, you have to get everyone on a phone and everything. They're just like huge hurdles where even if all the conditions are right for everyone to have access to a smartphone and do that, people are just going to choose not to, right? So there's always going to be some process or some factor of, I guess, accommodating those people, I guess in a way. And the whole digital ID thing, I think, is as well, it's another thing that they're sort of pushing for. I guess just generally when you're doing ID and authentication, it's like the hardest thing to get right and the easiest thing to get together. I don't think anyone who's put together a digital ID yet, or a digital visa and all these systems, most of them have all been breached or relatively almost thereabouts. So all the kind of security and privacy benefits they're selling are not really there. And as you said, right, there's so many things that underpin all of this that are required for that to work. It's only going to take one incident for people to sort of change their thinking. So I feel like there's been like a really big movement the last years for pushing for digital ID and all that stuff, and everyone should say it. Even just before this, I was scrolling and I saw somebody posting, oh, by the way, ChatGPT can make fake passport photos now. So, we need a digital ID to, verify people. And, the comments were pretty much, everyone was pretty much just laughing at this guy and telling him he's completely clueless. So, yeah, I have a lot of hope. I don't think it'll get there. I think it's impossible to implement for everyone. And yeah, I mean, there's an older generation now, like, my grandparents, they've never, used the internet or whatever. They don't have internet. So, how are you going to accommodate for these people? You typically seem to slow down as well as you get older. So I don't know how these solutions are going to work for everyone. So it just feels like they're just trying to cram a one size fits all solution, which is really great for their stock portfolio and, their sort of backers and things, but this is not going to work in reality. So, I think, not to say that there's nothing we need to do. We should always probably, stick up for privacy and security and try push for better options and ask for better options. But again, I think a lot of these guys are really selling this concept. They don't really understand how it all works. And, they're just really, really pushing it. I don't think it's going to work out. I wish them well. And what else can I say?
So you're saying there's a chance. I'm jokingly referring to Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber when he says the lady says there's a million, 1 in a million chance, and he's like takes it seriously. So you're saying there's a chance, but you mentioned basically the algorithm ghetto there, which I often refer to my guest Edwin Black's phrase, and it's funny. You're the second Nik I'm interviewing on the podcast today. Earlier this, I spoke to Nick Anthony of Cato Institute to talk about CBDCs, and I didn't plan this. I just so happened to have my Croatia coffee mug with me, where I'm speaking to my fellow Croat. But so you're saying with all this hubbub about digital ID and CBDCs, you're hopeful, you're optimistic that it's going to be very difficult to implement. Basically, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. I think all of these guys look at it from a certain point of view, like even passkey, right? If you're a business and you have some sign up process, instead of having to, run into their name and all their details and create an account, if you can sort of, use Google or something to automatically lock you, this is great because it helps you, sort of get a customer faster. So there's less friction, I guess. But I think from a user level, right, it also means that, hey, all your logins are at the mercy of like 4 companies. So it just has to happen that, one of these decides they don't like you, or one of them shuts down, or something happens, then you're kind of locked out of, hundreds of services. So I think it's there's still going to be passwords for a long time. We've got records of, Caesar using encryption and password to send messages thousands of years ago. So I'm going to remain optimistic and say passwords will probably be around for, as long as we're around, if that's a couple thousand years or else. So yeah, I think a lot of these guys are looking at it from the business perspective, which is, hey, this is really benefits, but they're not looking at it just from the, hey, as a user, I don't want to go along with this, and if you don't want to, you shouldn't. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, and I can see what you're saying. I brought this up on occasion. I'm trying to parse where they're going. So you do see them pushing forward constantly. My latest analysis, in Cyprus, they're now opening digital IDs to teenagers. In Nigeria, they're going to make national digital ID registration compulsory. Yet, I just marvel in my daily life. You think the internet goes out, the electricity goes out.
Yeah.
My sporadically, when I launch my desktop, it boots into BIOS. Sometimes it doesn't go into Windows. It's just like the car fails. I took my car for my first vehicle emissions test 2 years ago here in Mexico, and I get there and they have no electricity, and they're like, you have to come back another day. Just these sorts of types of events where, globally trying to implement. I lived in Kazakhstan, and just over there trying to implement technocracy, where they're everything is held together like it's a former Soviet Union technology and infrastructure, and everything is held together with like glue. It's just almost falling apart. Let me ask you about trust. People listening, they understand that in order to use new products, especially tech stuff, you have to develop trust and you have to be around for a bit. People will say, who's this Nik Kraljevic guy? We've got the above phone. Even still, people say, who's above phone? I've interviewed, he changed his name, Hakim Anwar of above phone, Gabriel Custodian of Watchman Privacy. I've known him. I've taken his courses. We've interviewed each other. I think he's interviewed me. And so, and then again, you yourself, you've been for years in Croatian media and papers. So again, you've established it's social credit basically. You're vetting people through social credit, and so just what would you say for people who are maybe paranoid or afraid to use PassVult, which has come out of nowhere?
Yeah, I'd say don't trust me. Try it out. Don't put all your secrets in there if you're suspicious out. There's many ways you can sort of see proxies to see if we're, piping data or doing any of that stuff. Some Twitter guys are asking us to do a white paper. We'll probably do that as well, I guess, in the short term. But, the way the app works is just standard encryption that's in every other operating system. I guess the real key advantage for us is that we're not also storing it, on Amazon or on Dropbox or Google or whatever. So yeah, I'd say don't trust it. People can always, reach out to us via the website or something, and if they want to ask questions, we're more than happy to answer. But yeah, I'd say, it's hard, right? Like, obviously you and I have spoke before a few times, but you never really know someone or trust someone. So I'd say, use it, find it, and you have to make your own decisions. I think everyone's sort of, the best way for all of this stuff, whether it's security or whatever, is making your own decisions and, spending the little bit of time necessary to vet and check up everything. I think everyone's also looking for, perfect security. But then no one wants to do any of the work to check it out themselves. So I'd say, don't trust me, do some research, check into it, reach out to us. That's the best I guess I can do for all those guys to say, yeah, come talk to us and if you're suspicious, yeah, you're right to be, you should be. That's going to probably stop you from having all your details breached or something there. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Well, it's a good segue because I mean, if people are using Microsoft Windows or Apple, they're not in the best ideal spot either because with now moving to Windows 11, where the AI is going to grab your screen, so anything you type, photos is going to be captured. Or Apple now, country by country, UK is demanding Apple break its encryption for backdoors and sort of. This is my another question I have for you. In the West, in particular, there's this attack on our civil liberties. Just this morning, I haven't read the full article. They're using this flimsy, lame, false pretext, if you ask me, for client side scanning. Right? They say for like child pornography or something like that, and it's like. No, we know that they want to get rid of our privacy. In the EU, in the US, in the English-speaking world, Ursula von der Leyen has these private corrupt messages with Albert Bourla of Pfizer, which what she's doing is illegal. And then, we can't have access to her WhatsApp. They magically disappear. Or Boris Johnson. They were going to investigate his messages. Oh, hi, sorry, I deleted them. Sorry, but they want to read ours, but we can't read theirs, and so they're trying to break encryption so that the EU wants to be able to read all of our emails, like personal emails, all messages and all messaging apps, Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp. I mean, you name it. I read this morning that obviously they're having a hard time getting what they want. VPNs. Now I heard EU is looking at going after VPNs, kind of like China style. Then you got hate speech, free speech laws, debanking. Just thoughts on this turn in the West towards attacking encryption, privacy, messaging, emails and all that.
Yeah, I guess if I want to, be fully conspiratorial or take the thing, like obviously all these governments have millions of dollars and assets, and I'm pretty sure they could crack most of the encryption anyway now. I mean, I think in this case they were pressuring Apple. They went to some forensics company, I think, and they were able to unlock the phone for the FBI, whatever. Anyway, so I think it's kind of out there. There's other news, right? Like I'd say for security to be done well, you have to be right 100% of the time. Even just once you're wrong, you're off it. So there's many doors and avenues. I kind of feel like this whole discussion is doesn't really make sense from the sense of I think they probably can crack a lot of encryption. I would say I would if you're security conscious, I'd assume that's a possibility. I don't know what for. Maybe it's just to make it easier for them because they don't even have to bother with that anymore or whatever. And I think, it's going to happen. I think there's, as we said, right, like some countries want to make it really easy for people to come in and move around or make it harder to leave at the moment. So I think the whole encryption debate is like another symptom of that whole situation where I think people are, they're trying to make sure that it's harder for you to leave and take your cash and your family or whatever out of a country and go to another one. I think it's the same thing with encryption, right? So, I don't know. I don't really understand it. But yeah, if I were to wager, I would bet that if they really wanted to, they could find you somehow, right? Like how do all these agencies, find someone and, spy on them? There's always a way, right? Like the Edward Snowden, leaks and all that a few years ago showed they've got, literally hundreds of ways to do stuff. So, I'd say, take all the precautions you can. But the whole debate itself, I don't really get it. It doesn't make sense. I don't know if it's like another thing of they don't really understand this topic, but they're, really pushing it and selling it, or it's, there's some other reason behind it. I don't know. That's just my best guess, I would say.
Yeah, it made me think with AI coming online now, maybe with AI, they could use that to sift through all the info, but if it's encrypted, again, that makes it difficult. So maybe what you say on an individual basis, they can probably crack it, but it's just easier if they take the walls down and deploy the AI to scan.
Yeah.
Right.
Or it could be a way to pump up, more AIs by just giving it data to train on. Like, I think I saw something saying that the whole reason that Studio Ghibli craze has come out is because AI says it's okay to train, data or AIs on sort of, their sort of IP and data, like the cartoon. So, I guess, yeah, it's probably also like there's definitely like IPs under attack. So, I think they want to just get as much IP as they can without having to pay anything for it to improve the models. So there's that factor as well.
I didn't think about that. That makes perfect sense. It's another reason that they would want to get rid of encryption beyond surveillance of the population, but also to train the AIs. Yeah, I never
Yeah.
actually thought about that with all the messages and emails. And all that. And so, so we've covered a lot. You've got your apps on helping people work towards their second or third citizenship for Croatians, Italians, Polish folks, and soon Argentinians and folks from Paraguay. And then the PassVult. Anything else that we haven't touched that you think is important?
Yeah, that's about it. I'll put some links in. I think on PassVult we're also going to try like a VIP concierge service or like a VIP cybersecurity guidance. So I'll send you a link after this too. If people are interested, if we can get enough people to sign up, we'll probably, it'll look something like doing a call with you. What's your situation? And then we'll sort of, make some recommendations, maybe get some people to get an above phone or something. I'm not an affiliate, so, whatever, but stuff like that. So we'll look at something like that as well. I think Argentina and Paraguay we're doing as well for residency and citizenship soon. So that's coming. So yeah, if people are interested, would love for them to sign up. But yeah, man, it's been great chatting to you. I think a couple of chats we had now, it's always awesome. It's always an awesome chat. So yeah, thank you for having me on, and hopefully we'll meet up in Croatia on the beach and have some janjetine and some gemišt or something.
So Mrak, yeah, maybe I'll be seeing you soon. And who knows? I just had the thought. You mentioned Argentina. Maybe there's some long lost Moric cousin of mine that made it to Argentina, and I can leverage that to get Argentine citizenship. Who knows? But all right, great talking with you, Nik. Your links are in the description. So thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Stay safe.